listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Dr. Rima, we are live.
Welcome to the Dr. Rima Truth Reports. You are listening to the drumbeat of freedom and the heartbeat of truth. I'm Rima Ilebo, MD, and with me, as always, my co-host and a co-trustee of the Natural Solutions Foundation, Ralph Fusatola. Good evening, Ralph.
Good evening, Dr. Rima. Great evening it is.
We have an amazing show. If your socks are still on now, if they haven't been blown by various truth revelations, well, hold on, because they will be blown. Our guest tonight is one of my very favorite people, Susanne Posel. She has a lot to tell you that is going to depress you, that is going to elate you, and that is going to trouble you. And unfortunately, everything she has to tell you is true. Before we bring Susanne Posel on and find out how she's so eminently qualified to be so very disturbing in the news that she's going to bring to us, as always, I would like to talk to you about the health freedom news of the week. The health freedom news of the week starts with something very good for a change, which is that we are in the process of breaking the back of the pharmaceutical hegemony. Big Pharma, as you know, is invested solely in one thing, and that is keeping you as sick as possible as long as possible, for which reason they are deeply involved in the agricultural degradation of your food. They are deeply involved in the suppression of information that you need to make health decisions. They are involved in taking away those health decisions through lobbying and through efforts to co-opt regulatory agencies, at which they are particularly adroit. Big Pharma is the same as big agriculture, which is the same as big agrochemical companies, which is the same as big genetically modified engineering, big biotech, which is the same as big Medica and big insurance. It is a cartel, and it's built around keeping you dependent, weak, sick, and profitable. Now, what would happen? Imagine if you had the tools, simple, inexpensive, gentle, safe, non-toxic tools to keep yourself healthy, to virtually never need to visit a doctor, to virtually never have any reason to fill a pharmaceutical prescription, and to say no to all injections. What would happen if you had, let's say, two tools that could do that? One being, for example, nanosilver, so any infectious agent, parasite, virus, bacterium could be gotten rid of safely, quickly, and efficiently. And the second one being, let's say, for example, CBD hemp oil, so that inflammation and neurological issues and chronic degenerative disorders could be well treated in most all cases. What would happen if that was within the reach of your budget because they were both remarkably inexpensive? What would happen is that the entire game would change. Well, the Natural Solutions Foundation has created a subsidiary entity called Natural Solutions Health, which is now in partnership with the national supply of CBD, high-quality organic CBD hemp oil, which will be grown in Chile and exported to the entire world for just those purposes. We also have a brand new product called Dr. Rima Recommends, the Silver Solution, and you can get it at our marketplace. You can get a lot of really good things, including CBD hemp oil products at our marketplace. That's very good news. Our marketplace is www.nsf for Natural Solutions Foundation, nsfmarketplace.com. Those are letters that together form a URL that allow you to put your health and the control of your health back into your hands. How wonderful. It's been a long time coming. Now, having said that, and I'll say it one more time, nsfmarketplace.com, for those people who really get this opportunity and want to be part of creating the CBD hemp revolution, because that's what it is, then I would suggest that you send an email to Ralph that's RALPH at fundfornaturalsolutions.org, Ralph at fundfornaturalsolutions.org, and say, hey, tell me more about this. I want to be part of the correct direction for healthcare, autonomy, and freedom. And I also want to be an investor. And we'll send you lots of information so you can see whether this is right for you. It's certainly right for the planet. It's certainly right for people who want to be healthy and want to hold their own health in their own hands. And it's definitely wrong for the globalists. Well, too bad. So that's one piece of health news. What else is happening in the health freedom world, Ralph?
My. Well, more American veterans are dying at the hands of the Veterans Administration. More of the FDA's time is being spent harassing people who are doing things like producing cheese on wooden boards, thereby promoting.
Not cheese on wooden boards.
Yes, no. How barbaric, right? Of course.
Not the way it's been produced for 2,000 years.
Well, we can't allow any probiotics in the food we eat, right? So that's one of the things that we want to point out. We do have an action item, folks, on that one. One of our tiny URLs, tinyurl.com/cheesy, that's CHEESY, cheesy FDA, because the FDA's move against natural wooden cheese boards and similar artisanal craft-like production methods is just part of a much bigger plan. A bigger plan that can be called Agenda 21, or that can be called Global so-called Health Security Initiative. All of these things are part and parcel of the same game.
But you call it Agenda 21 aside?
Agenda 21 aside, it can certainly be. Indeed. Well, Congress is sort of off for the summer, so at least they're not giving more power to the FDA at the present moment. So that's good news too.
There's a new bill that I just heard about today that I haven't had time to research deeply yet, that would make growing your own food in your garden a federal crime, which I predicted 6 years ago.
And indeed, Dr. Rima, we can expect, as the crazed establishment gets more crazed, as the contradictions in its crony system become more obvious, that it will become far crazier and more violent and more intrusive in our lives. Hopefully, people will take that as a warning and begin to organize themselves in their communities to resist. That was, I think, Walt Whitman's famous quote: "Obey little, resist much." And I think our guest tonight may be talking a bit about that too.
Indeed. One of the things that I love about our guest tonight, Susanne Posel, is that she, like you, like me, like the general, sees no need to pussyfoot around. When she knows that something is true, incontrovertibly true and real, she will say so, and she will put it out to people to simply allow truth to ring like the resonant bell that it should be in all of our hearts, and then to let the consequences unfold in the most positive and fruitful way possible. So welcome, Susanne.
And I understand, Susanne, that the title of our show tonight is "The Most Important Propaganda Machine of which you've never heard, the Council for National Policy. Very interesting.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me on the show.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. I wonder, before we start talking about the Council for Foreign Policy and who they are and who they've co-opted, if you would be kind enough to tell us who you are and how you got to be the shining truth teller that you are.
Wow. I don't know if I can live up to that, but I appreciate it. I started writing articles about nearly 4 years ago. About a year and a half before that, I was watching a documentary by Niles Ferguson on the banking collapse in 2008. It's a 6-hour documentary, and about a third of the way in, he starts talking about what fiat currency is and how the dollar is a fiat currency and that it has no worth. It is not backed by any tradable commodity like gold or any precious metal at all. No commodity at all. It's worth what they say it is, but there's no backing to it. And my head felt like it was splitting. I still laugh at that. The money is fake. It's fake. This thing that we grew up trading and working our lives to obtain and have more of it in our wallet means nothing. And so when I realized that the money was fake, I started looking into what else is fake. And I just took off my hat and said, okay, anything's up for grabs. Let's see what is actually happening. My background is as a paralegal, and paralegals are researchers. So I started looking into taking everything with a grain of salt, but looking at anything I could get my hands on. A lot of it is interesting and amusing, and I'm interested in facts. I know that good information is only useful in the hands of people who can do something about it, which is why I chose to be a journalist. Because when I write an article, this is information that I am publishing, and I'm giving it to you. Everyone listening, I'm giving this information to you because I know that you are the person who can do something about it. And I know that if you can't, for whatever reason, no one's going to judge you. You will pass it along to someone else who can. And that's how we actually affect real change in our society, by using journalism as it was intended to be, to expose corruption so that we can make better decisions and actually affect real change instead of just complaining about it and creating more avenues for more people to just continue to complain about it, to where it becomes more of a parody of itself and completely ineffectual.
Wow.
You know, that's a very powerful concept. The way the Danes rendered the German occupation literally meaningless was that they laughed at it. They laughed the first time they saw the Germans goose-stepping down their main boulevard when they had taken over the country overnight. They laughed whenever the Germans tried to make edicts stick. And they laughed, they giggled, and the Germans had no idea what to do about it because that was so outside their particular box. And then they left the sabotage, and they did sabotage everything, but they did it while they were laughing in the Germans' faces, and the Germans were emotionally so stunned that they could do nothing. But they also acted at the same time that they carried out psychological warfare on the German soldiers and officials.
It is extremely important to understand that we are still susceptible to marketing and salesmen, and the salesmen have now come in behind the camera and sit there dressed up like news broadcasters and radio broadcasters. And it's not just the celebrities that are selling us things. It is the CEOs and the philanthropists that we look up to. It's the heroes, the people that are elevated, not just celebrities, but like Bill Gates. And I don't agree with anything that he does, but he has a status and he's elevated to it. Think about how we still talk about Steve Jobs as if he has some halo over his head.
But that's the thing.
It is the marketing.
These people are thoroughly marketed. It's not because they do anything good. It's because they buy position precisely through the marketing aspects. And the reason I was talking about the Danes included the fact that it was quite clear that they didn't buy into the marketing. They didn't buy into the German superiority marketing. And they said, oh, that's ridiculous. And so they remained, if you will, able to think for themselves and decide for themselves what they were going to do and where their allegiance was going to be. And they remained free, even though they were officially conquered.
That is the proof that it doesn't matter what's happening on the outside. If you're free, you're free. And if you find free people, we can choose to replace the oppressors. There's smart people among us. There are technologically advanced people among us. And I'm not talking about transhumanism. I'm talking about people who write code, people who know how to write software, who contribute to open source software. There are people who understand politics. There are professors. There are scientists among us. We can replace, there are entrepreneurs and business moguls. We can replace every multinational corporation simply by starting our own. Just replace them, and we all shop at them.
Well, look at what we're doing with CBD hemp, for example. Look at what we're doing with nanosilver. We are eliminating the need for antibiotics and vaccines. There is no need for vaccines. We're eliminating any fictional need that vaccines might be presented as having. And we're with real protection. And we're also giving people the opportunity to own their health and own the product that will give them so much health. We can do this. Why wouldn't we? Why shouldn't we? My goodness. This is our birthright to own ourselves.
The only way that they can stop us, in fact, is to reveal the mailed fist inside the velvet glove, which they do on a regular basis, of course.
But they're not quite ready.
They're not quite ready to impose the sort of East German model, if you will. Maybe. I don't know.
And even there, that fell apart, if you remember. So,
sure
Susanne,
did.
you saw that. I'm sorry, Ralph, I did not mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay.
So you saw that everything was sort of Oz-like, and you began using your skills as a researcher and a writer, or maybe you continued using your skills as a researcher and a writer to deal with what you were finding. How long ago was this? You said
this was nearly 4 years ago when I started Occupy Corporatism, and I chose the name not aligning myself with the Occupy movement, but because occupation of everything is incorporated. And yes, the banks are the problem and the monetary control is the problem, but they're corporations too. So look at what just happened on Capitol Hill with the Supreme Court. I don't know if people understand the ramifications of Hobby Lobby and that decision. Now, with Citizens United, corporations became people. They have free speech. And that includes their ability to give to an organization, but they have restrictions. They have lots of paperwork and all sorts of stuff to do. Now, they have freedom of religion. Corporations have freedom of religion. That's what Hobby Lobby is about.
well,
Corporations having
corporations
having freedom of religion means that a corporation who is a person can make a decision that it's going to be a Christian corporation or a Muslim corporation or a Satanist corporation, and they have the right to express their religious views as a corporation to their employees who may or may not agree with their religious values and base their rules and regulations on their religious values, whether or not their employees agree or disagree. Now, from a legal standpoint, going forward, if you're going to get a job at Hobby Lobby, you should be able to have a document provided to you to where you understand that the rules and regulations concerning your employment at Hobby Lobby are based on Christian values. Now, whether you agree with that or not, you should know that, just like you should know that when you go to Taco Bell and Burger King, you're eating horse, not beef, not cow.
Ah,
So,
revelation of what to expect.
now corporations have,
Transparency.
absolutely, now corporations have freedom of speech. Corporations have
Yep.
freedom of religion. Are corporations going to want to become a gender? Are corporations going to lobby that they have the same rights as males and females in their respective species under our cultural understanding and our Constitution?
Mm.
How far is this going to go? How human are the corporations going to want to be?
And what happens
Because-
when the corporations get run by artificial intelligences and computers, and there really are no people at the top, or the people are just figureheads? That's all very interesting. But of course, the truth is, guys, that the corporations are fictions. They are legal fictions. What really exists are people. The CEO is an actual person. He's not a robot yet. And the members of the board of directors are also people. And when you trace who they are, you learn where the control is, I'm sure.
Well, it's very interesting. I wonder if corporations will want to have same market marriages, and if they will, if that's called a merger, isn't it?
Yes. So they no longer call it a merger or a subsidiary. Now they marry. Now they have the same rights as married couples do. Do corporations, let's put it this way, if they want to be human, most humans live to be about 72 to 78 years. Let's just end the corporation around there. If they want to be human, let's treat them like human. If it's a female corporation, they only earn 83 cents on the dollar because men earn more than women.
I love it. Well, I'm a little more concerned not about gender inequality of corporations. Poor dears, I think they'll manage somehow. I'm a little bit more concerned by the end run around anything even remotely approaching, let's say, separation of church and state, anything even remotely approaching any kind of Bill of Rights guarantee or human rights within the corporation. Let's say that it's a Muslim corporation or some sort of cult corporation that decides that women cannot look men in the eyes because that affronts their particular God. Okay, then in order to work there, you'd have to subscribe to that and the dress code and the lack of equal opportunity, even though federal law says that you're supposed to have equal opportunity irrespective of gender or religion. Or so what's happened is that Hobby Lobby has taken the courts and the corporations on a direct collision course with what we used to have as a kind of lodestar for our legal and moral compass called the Constitution of the United States.
Certainly, the Constitution has nothing in it about corporations, and there is no. And one of the great debates in the early part of the Republic was whether Congress had the authority to create private corporations. And the state governments certainly claimed that authority, but whether that authority was ever given to the federal government took a couple of generations to decide. Always in favor, of course, of more power for the federal government. But you've got a fiction, a legal fiction, a corporation. It is not a natural person. It has some very unnatural attributes like immortality and limited liability and a few other attributes. These attributes don't exist in nature. They only exist by operation of law. And it seems to me that these creatures of the law are themselves subject to the law. if they choose to be creatures of the law, and it would not be inappropriate, from my viewpoint, for these creatures of the law to have to be transparent in their behavior. And indeed they are. They have to keep books and records, and the shareholders have a right to see the books and records and all that sort of stuff. So there are restrictions on the corporate power. And the question is always, what restrictions serve society in this concept? Because the corporations only exist for that purpose.
Well, let me submit this. GM recently admitted that because of one of their products, they killed at least 13 people. If you or I did that, we would be in an electric chair or have lethal injection.
But of course, if a pharmaceutical company only killed 30 people, they would be considered among the safest pharmaceutical companies. So I guess it's all perspective.
GM wants religious freedom, and it wants freedom of speech, and it wants to be considered as a person, then the fact that they killed 13 people, they should be on trial for murder of those 13 people, or at least manslaughter, and they should go to jail.
How do you put a fiction in jail?
To jail.
How do you put a fiction in jail? Right.
Exactly. Well, exactly. And the fact that we've given them free speech and the fact that we're giving them freedom of religion opens the door to freedom of gender equality, freedom of whatever you can think of.
All right. So what happens? So what if Hobby Lobby? What if Hobby Lobby wasn't a corporation? What if it was a sole proprietorship, a partnership among the members of that family, and they owned a dozen Hobby Lobbies around the area, and they were not corporation. They were not a corporation to begin with. Would the analysis change? Would their rights be different vis-a-vis their employees? What if the employees and the owners, let's say we're all Amish and all had the same beliefs, and nobody but Amish got, hired to work in that store? And there are stores like that, by the way, as we all know. What do you do? How does that relate to this whole concept? Because remember, the court said this only applies to closely held, like family corporations, where the corporation is just an alter ego for a private owner.
There was a family of Mennonites who joined with Hobby Lobby that nobody's really talking about.
Oh, that's
they
interesting.
said that they create cabinets out of wood, and they didn't want their money to be going toward killing anyone. But I have to say that more people die from hammers than they do from guns. So, and Mennonites use hammers to make their wood cabinets. So I would have a problem buying their cabinets because they make them with a deadly weapon. This is how ridiculous this whole conversation is, that we're even talking about something that doesn't exist that now has human rights.
Right.
And where is it going to end?
Well, of course, the ultimate philosophical problem is that a lot of Western philosophy is based on fictions. It was Hegel who insisted that there were laws of history, and that those laws of history operated not on individuals, but on collectives, that the classes and nations and peoples and, of course, corporations were the real actors in history, not individual human beings. And Hegel's views were accepted by the Marxists and by the Nazis, and basically ran the 20th century, resulting in 100 million unarmed, inconvenient lives being ended, mostly by their own governments, of course. So it's these fictions have consequences, and in the 100 years, and this is the right time to think about the 100 years. Here we are approaching the 100th anniversary of the folly of 1914, the guns of August, when the world blundered its way into a bloodbath. Not unlike what's going on right now, I might add.
Not unlike it at all, as a matter of fact. And that's a very important point. So let's talk. Okay, Hobby Lobby is astonishingly dangerous to anything like the rule of law, actually, when you really think about it. So let's talk about who's who's pulling the strings. Let's talk about the propaganda that's telling us what we ought to think, what we ought to believe. Let's talk about why we are being swayed, or how we are being swayed in this or that direction. And let's be specific about the people that we think we can trust.
In fact, Suzanne, who is the Council for National Policy? What are we dealing with?
Well, Hobby Lobby ties in to the Council for National Policy, so our whole conversation was sort of a segue.
Yes, I had that very thought. So, tell us about the Council for Foreign Relations.
Well, they are connected to this. The Council for National Policy was founded in April of 1981, which happens to coincide with January 20th, 1981, where Ronald Reagan took office, and that's not a coinky-dink.
All right.
The council.
By the way,
that's interesting.
That was an unintentional slip. The Council for Foreign Relations fell from my tongue. I did not intend to say that, but I suspect that it's not so far off the mark as I think we'll hear.
It's not. In fact, for a very simplistic idea, think of it, the trunk of the tree are the controllers, the elite, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them. And on the left side, the blue team, and everyone that falls underneath that, including media and celebrities and books and movies, is the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR. On the right hand, the red team, the Republicans, and everybody that falls underneath that, Fox News and Red State and all of that, and all the celebrities, including the alternative media, including a lot of patriot, constitutionalist, Tea Party movements, are controlled by the Council for National Policy. It's been this way for 33 years. That just happens to be a little coinky-dink.
Yeah. Go for it.
In 1981, Reverend Tim LaHaye, who is the co-author of the Left Behind series, and if you are familiar.
Yes, I am. It's very interesting.
It is.
Yeah. Dr. Rima, the Left Behind series, is a series of a dozen or more novels that with excruciating detail go through the last days scenario as seen by certain fundamentalist sects and the way they interpret the book of Revelations and other biblical passages, and it sort of recreates in gory detail one interpretation of all those events. That's all.
Absolutely, and it is he himself is extremely influential in conservative Christian, even evangelical circles, just like John Hagee, TBN, Trinity Broadcasting Network. Putting him at the head of this 501c3 is not arbitrary. Some of the partners who helped fund the Council for National Policy was Paul Weyrich, who is the conservative political organizer and co-founder of the Heritage Foundation. Heritage Foundation being extremely influential in alternative and independent circles, as well as conservative and Tea Party and Patriot circles as well. Nelson Baker Hunt, who is the son of H.L. Hunt, the oil billionaire, and you're going to hear more about H.L. Hunt and how he helped create some of the incidents that we have seen just recently, like Bundy Ranch, Murrieta, what's going on with the immigration and the border, what's going on in Texas. One of the people who gave money to set up the Council for National Policy was Eric Prince, the founder of Blackwater. His mother put up money, millions of dollars, to set this up. But the biggest donor was Reverend Sun Myung Moon.
Oh. That's like saying the CIA was the biggest donor.
Exactly. So this Christian organization pushing Christian values, in fact, as part of their mission, the founders stated that they were, quote, seeking to create a Christian conservative alternative to the liberalism of the Council on Foreign Relations. But remember, they're just the other side. They're just the other wing. They are together the left-right paradigm, the us versus them, the red versus the blue team.
Mm-hmm.
They are that. So when we talk about the left-right paradigm, you don't have to say left-right anymore. You can say CFR and CNP. You know who they are. Now, Reverend Sun Myung Moon is important because this man is a cult leader. And he was actually coronated as Savior and King of the world on Capitol Hill in the late 80s by congressmen and House representatives and members of the CNP who, when it was exposed on, in fact, mainstream television, the lawmakers said, oops, we didn't know we were going to a coronation ceremony. We thought that we were going to a policy meeting. And why they didn't leave when they saw that there were people dressed in robes. Sun Myung Moon actually wore a red robe with white trim, and a crown was literally placed on his head and his wife's head as savior of the world. This man believes that Jesus didn't fulfill all of his missions, and that since Sun Myung Moon is here, he is the second coming of Christ, and he's finished everything that Jesus left behind and left for him to solidify. And this man is the biggest donor of the CNP. This has nothing to do with Christian values, and yet the member list of this this organization, and this is all that I've been able to vet, is pretty shocking, and it's pretty lengthy. So, are you guys ready for the member list?
Yeah.
Go for it.
And you can stop me at any time
No,
if you want to discuss one of these people.
All right.
Richard Allen, National Security Advisor under Reagan. John Ashcroft, former U.S. Attorney General. Steve Baldwin, no relation to the Baldwin brothers. He is the CEO and director of the Council for National Policy. Gary Bauer, who is the head of Family Research Center and really big in Christian, conservative, evangelical circles. Armand de Borchgrave, who is a journalist for the Washington Times. Now, the Washington Times was founded and is still funded by Reverend Sun Myung Moon.
Right.
Just
Right.
so you know.
Conservative Christian values. I'm sort of choking here. I feel like I've just swallowed an
500 child brides, all being married at once.
That could be a conservative Christian value. Really, really, really conservative. They've kept it a real secret. Go ahead.
They have targeted the Christians in a very serious way, and it'll become apparent as we go through this. Richard DeVos, who is the co-founder of Amway. James Dobson, former president, Focus on the Family, huge, influential. When I was in my early 20s, I remember reading his books on relationships. I mean, very influential. Jerry Falwell, televangelist. Edwin Fuellner, who is the founder for Heritage Foundation, that makes two. Gary Gentry, who is an lobbyist for Koch brothers, Koch Industries, and yes, both Koch brothers are members of the Council for National Policy. Larry Klayman, the founder of Judicial Watch. Now, that should definitely set off something in your brain, because this gentleman just went all the way to the Supreme Court with a suit against the NSA and was at the last minute told that he can't sue a federal agency for doing what they did. And Larry Klayman is hugely influential. Judicial Watch is widely quoted and seen as a credible authority.
Do you think that he brought that case specifically to allow it to be thrown out so that challenges going forward would get lower courts to say, Supreme Court threw it out, so we're throwing out your case? Or do you think he was actually trying to defend us against the NSA?
I don't know. Knowing what I know about the Council for National Policy, everything that the members do, and some of the people who are influenced or in collusion with the actual members, I say it's all suspect. I'm sorry. And a lot of what we believe about what's happening in our world comes out of the mouths of these people who belong to this organization that has as its agenda to kick off a second civil war, a second revolution, for the express purpose to finally get their talons into our Constitution. So I'll continue on with the list. Wayne LaPierre, who is the CEO, president, and spokesman for the NRA, very influential person. Very influential. Pat Mastriano, who is the producer of the Clinton Chronicles. So if you haven't seen this, this is a film that was made. You can find it on YouTube. This is where we get the Clinton body count from.
Oh.
And so I have to say, I have to call that suspect, because the CNP's purpose. Let me read you their mission statement before I continue with the members, so we understand how they are the propaganda machine that the CFR is to the blue team.
Mm-hmm.
In their mission statement, they include such agendas as, quote, to acquaint our membership with those in positions of leadership in our nation in order that mutual respect be fostered, to encourage the exchange of information concerning the methodology of working within the system, to promote the values and ends sought by CNP members. That is propaganda. That is, they show up at their birthday party, they stuff money in their pockets, they get them cocaine and prostitutes, whatever it takes to get people who are influential, CEOs, philanthropists, members of our Congress, members of presidential administrations, members of corporations. They do whatever it takes to get their values and their agendas, the majority of what passes, what is brought forward, and what is supported.
So it's not Hobby Lobby, it's Super Lobby.
Yes, and Steve Green, president of Hobby Lobby, is a member of the CNP.
Now, you know, when you talk about the CFR, there are a number of progressive professors who belong to CFR and who always explain their membership as giving them an opportunity to have influence over the powerful. Are there members of the CNP who are also there because they think that they are influencing the red team?
Yes.
You know, and then are there real rivalries between different power groupings?
There is a real rivalry happening. And as I get into the violent aspect of this group, I'll explain to you the rivalry between the red and the blue team and why we are seeing all of this police state. Okay, I'm going to explain that to you too. Oliver North is a member of the CNP, and he just finished a book tour. Never been more popular. Ralph Reed, former head of the Christian Coalition.
Mm-hmm.
Right there, hugely influential person. Pat Robertson, televangelist. John Sununu, former chief of staff to George H.W. Bush, and yes, George H.W. Bush is a member of the CNP. Dr. Stanley Monteith.
By the way, wouldn't the Bushes also be members of the CFR? Is there overlap between these two groups?
Yes.
That is interesting, I have to say.
Because at the end of the day, the function needs to get done. It doesn't matter if the blue team wins or the red team wins. At the end of the day, they have a goal, they have an agenda, and somebody is going to do that. Now, you'll see the red team and the blue team argue over policy or timing or maybe who gets credit for it, but they never, ever argue about whether or not it's actually going to happen. It's going to happen. They just want maybe Senator Ted Cruz, who's a member of the CNP, he gets credit for something, or Rand Paul, who's a member of the CNP, he gets credit for something. Dr. Stanley Monteith.
But no matter who controls.
That's very interesting, Stan Monteith. I've been on Stan Monteith's show. We differed about a number of things, but I had the delusion that Dr. Stan Monteith was, in fact, more sophisticated than this, because I consider these policy positions exceedingly unsophisticated. But do go on.
Absolutely. The people that we see in alternative media and who influences alternative and independent media, when I saw those names, that's when I was floored, because I realized the implications are every time we hear something coming out of their mouth, it's CNP. And also the implication is guilt by association. So why are certain people promoting people who are members of the CNP? Eric Erickson, obviously, chief editor for RedState.com, hugely influential in libertarian and conservative Christian circles. Louis Berner, who is the managing director of Bain Capital, and yes, Mitt Romney is a member of the CNP as well. Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal, just in the news. He's getting sued by Louisiana residents because he wants to take Common Core out of the schools in Louisiana. And I don't have any direct connection with Glenn Beck, but Glenn Beck did a favor for his CNP governor of Louisiana by taking his argument for the removal of Common Core to theaters, where people could sit down in a theater and watch him defend a CNP member. Now, do I agree with Common Core? Absolutely not. There's a reason why I homeschool my kids. But Bobby Jindal is a member of the CNP.
Is being a member, is it possible that a bunch of people were told the CNP is the alternative to CFR? You don't want to deal with those guys, so you can have your influence here instead. Is it a way of bringing dissidents like maybe Rand Paul into the system?
Yes, Rand Paul is a member of the CNP, but Ron Paul is not.
Got it.
Ron Paul is surrounded by members of the CNP, but he is not a member himself. But John Allison, president and CEO of the Cato Institute, is a member of the CNP.
I assume Lou Rockwell is not, on the other hand.
I have not seen a direct connection, but I'm still researching. I'm bringing you the people that I have vetted that are absolute members.
But I'll probably be surprised. I am surprised by a few of the people you've mentioned so far.
Is this a public membership list, or do you have to ferret this out?
This list is compiled from people who have shown up at meetings and spoken, are involved with, write articles for, go to events and sponsor events and host events for the CNP. They have not been able, or researchers have not been able to find an exact list of their meetings and attendees since 1992, because they're actually a real secret group. When I went back and read all of these old articles coming out of the New York Times, coming out of the Washington Post in the 80s and the 90s, and even in 2010, they were sparse, and we know that they meet 3 times a year, but we only know that because one of their members said that. We don't know if it's still true. We don't know where. We don't know when. We don't know how. And nobody ever will, because they're an actual real secret group. Not like the Bilderbergs, who let you know where they're going so you can get out your bullhorn. Not that that's not important, but I'm saying a real secret group keeps their secrets. So
Indeed.
Let me get back to the list of the members, because it gets worse after this. Fred Barnes, who is the executive editor of the Weekly Standard, like I mentioned, Steve Green, who is the president of Hobby Lobby Stores, Jim DeMint, president-elect of the Heritage Foundation, that makes 3.
Former member of Congress as well. Yeah.
Michael Medved, who is a syndicated talk show host and celebrated author. Like I mentioned, Rand Paul, Kentucky Senator. Pat Buchanan, who has been a member of the CNP for a very, very long time. In fact, he had that show Crossfire where he sat down with his CFR buddy and CNP, and they sat there talking like they're arguing, and they're really having a good time. And he ran for president. And Pat Buchanan was supported by members of the alternative movement, and he's a member of the CNP. Like I mentioned, Eric Prince, the founder of Blackwater, obviously his mother put up some money to set up the organization. John Bolton, former Assistant Secretary for the International Organization Affairs and the U.S. Department of State.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Mark Meckler, who is the co-founder or former co-founder and national coordinator of the Tea Party Patriots. Mark
Yeah.
Meckler was asked to resign from the Tea Party Patriots because there was a scandal. He allowed monies to be taken in, some people call it a bribe, to allow Koch brothers to infiltrate the Tea Party Patriots. But see, the Koch brothers and Koch Industry are members of the CNP, and Mark Meckler is a member of the CNP. So how can you infiltrate your own organization? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, there are real social movements going on. You know, the
There
Occupy
are real
movements,
social movements going
the
on,
Tea Party movement
but
to some extent, the Occupy movement to some extent. So people create organizations to sort of ride on those movements. And you know, Tea Party was around a lot before Tea Party Patriots, and in fact, it's just really a reemergence of the taxpayers movement of the 1970s and 80s. Same people even, but
right.
but of course there's always going to be these astroturf organizations created. That's for sure.
Absolutely. The version that you see of everything is the marketed, branded version that they know you're going to get behind. They've already done the focus groups. They've already picked the right packaging. They've got their color scheme. They got it all together before you see it. You see the finished product. Mark Meckler is important because of his involvement with the Tea Party Patriots, the founding of the Tea Party Patriots, and his membership with the CNP. But Mark Meckler has moved on to the Convention of the States Project, which is pushing Article 5, which eventually could lead to the rewriting of our incomplete Constitution.
Right, and who would rewrite it? That's for sure. That's really interesting, and we are very close to triggering the Convention of the States. By some people's counts, a state or two away at the most.
Right, and there are spin-offs to the Convention of the States Project.
Right.
I've spoken to a couple of the people who run the spin-offs. When it comes to Mark Meckler and the Convention of the States Project and what this implies and what the potential or probable consequences of the Convention of the States would be, I ask myself, why does the CNP want us to have a Convention of the States? Because that's who is setting it up, through Mark Meckler. Now, I'll get back to the list of people who are members of the CNP. Jerome Corsi, Paul Craig Roberts, Orly Tates.
Wow. The last three have just really caught my attention. Go ahead.
Mark Levin. He probably needs no introduction, but conservative public interest lawyer and syndicated talk show host and New York Times bestseller. He also has written for the Washington Times. Christopher Ruddy, who is the CEO of Newsmax and former investigative reporter, Newsmax.com, no different than the Washington Times. Andrew Breitbart was a member of the CNP, and that struck me because he was Breitbarted. I wonder why they killed one of their own. What was he going to say?
Well, membership does not necessarily mean control in these social organizations and these groupings. Just because a person is a member doesn't mean they're being controlled by any particular group within that. I'm not, there may be people who think they're independent.
Nor does it mean that they're being protected. He was
Yeah.
Breitbarted. It's not clear whether he was Breitbarted by these people, by the other people, or by some other people.
And there are probably numerous groupings within the intelligence apparatus that are, friendly to neither the red nor the blue, and consider that just to be window dressing, which of course is what it is.
Let me back up for a second, Suzanne. Do you have information that would suggest that it was this organization that in fact took Breitbart out.
No, unfortunately, I don't have any direct connections. I'm still looking into it because looking at it after the fact, there's a lot of convolution, and so there's a lot to sift through. So I don't. I'm sorry. It was a supposition. It was an implication that may not have any merit. But Breitbart used to write for the Washington Times before he became publisher of Breitbart.com, Breitbart TV, BigGovernment.com, BigHollywoodBreitbart.com. So, you get your start at the Washington Times and you move your way up. You got some charisma. You get a prominent position. House Representative Michelle Bachmann is a member of the CNP. And this is interesting to me because 2 years ago she was going on and on about the aide to Hillary Clinton being a member, or her family members, her mother and her two brothers being members of the Muslim Brotherhood, and that this woman who was Hillary Clinton's aide was really a portal for the Muslim Brotherhood to get to the head of the State Department and then eventually work its way into the Oval Office itself, coming out of the CNP's mouth. And I have to remind people that, during the 80s, when we were having trouble with Iran, we painted the same kind of portraits. There were lots of stories about Christians being murdered in Muslim countries, much like we see a lot of that floating around in alternative and independent circles now. The names have changed, but it's kind of the same storyline. Is it actually happening? Has it happened in the past? I don't know. But when the same story resurfaces and you just change the names and the dates, it makes me wonder, especially when it comes out of the mouths of CNP members or people who work with CNP members.
Indeed. And it's our responsibility to wonder a lot.
We are coming to the end of the first portion of the program in the next minute or two. We may want to sum up where we are at this point and where we'll be going over the next hour.
Susanne Posel, our guest, is sharing with us some of the powerful information about who's on the propaganda train and why they're there. We'll be back on the Dr. Rima Reports.
Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome back to the Dr. Rima Truth Reports. I'm Rima Ilebo, MD. I'm the medical director of the Natural Solutions Foundation. With me, my co-host and co-trustee and counsel for the foundation, Ralph Fusatola. And tonight we're talking to Susanne Posel about the most important, the most influential, and the most powerful propaganda group you've never heard of. This is a show that is about to get ugly. We're about to get into the part of the show, I think Susanne and Ralph will agree with me, in which some of the people that you did not realize were co-opted and had propaganda blood on their hands do. And we're going to talk to somebody who's researched this in a very, very solid fashion, Susanne Posel. Before we go back to Susanne, I want to tell you that you're going to need coffee to survive this information. And the coffee that you should have is Health Freedom's own coffee. We grow organic certified coffee in Panama on a teaching farm to teach farmers the practical realities of not using chemicals to grow and to protect their crops. In a country like Panama or Ecuador or Guinea-Bissau or any other country with coffee culture in it, Sumatra, farmers are very poor and they cannot afford to lose their crop. So they'll use anything on it that somebody tells them will protect their income, make sure that they don't get kicked off the land, make sure that their children have shoes or can go to school. And so subsistence farmers grow this money crop, and their lives and livelihood depends on it being successful. Now that means that if there's an infestation, a fungus or a bug or whatever, they don't care about the long-term consequences or the short-term consequences. They will spray, they will use chemicals in order to protect their lives, not realizing that they're actually destroying the earth and making their families terribly ill at the same time. So we decided we would open a teaching farm in the mountains of Panama, and we would demonstrate for local farmers and farmers from afar exactly how such a valuable and delicate crop, and believe me, coffee is heir to a million zillion different things that can happen to it to destroy the crop. Let me tell you, we decided that we would find natural solutions and share that with these other farmers. And in so doing, we wound up with a working, highly productive, and very beautiful, safe, clean coffee farm. Well, that's lovely. But we also wound up with coffee. And we said, oh, yes, coffee. We've got a lot of coffee. What should we do with it? And Ralph and General Burt and I said, why don't we give it away? Why don't we give it away as a gift to our supporters, to the people who make sure that health freedom is alive and kicking very hard. So if you go to nsfmarketplace.com or if you go to valleyofthemooncoffee.com, you will be able to make a donation for $25, pay the shipping and handling, and have the best, safest, cleanest coffee you have ever had. Give it to everyone you know. Make it a Christmas gift, a Hanukkah's gift, a Kwanzaa gift, an Easter gift, a Labor Day gift, a Mother's Day gift, a Coffee Day gift. Make it a gift. Give it to people and tell them the story. This is about friendly food. This is about being kind to the environment, kind to the worker, kind to the consumer, and kind to the genetics of the plant, which then has the opportunity to express itself in grateful coffee. You will love it, I promise you. If you don't, you'll be the only person who hasn't, and will refund your money for free. I mean, instantly, no problem. But if you're like everybody else who's tasted it, you're going to say, this is the best coffee I've ever had. And you'll be drinking coffee that supports what you believe in. www.valleyofthemooncoffee.com or nsfmarketplace.com.
And it is delicious.
Oh, it is spectacular. Okay, moving right along. Susanne, we were talking about the members of this secret organization which is designed to bring a religious hegemony to a state, the United States of America, that was founded upon the principle of separation of church and state. So how can that be? What's going on? Talk to us. Talk to us about members.
It is quite interesting that they have targeted the Christians in order to further this. Michael Steele, who is the chairman of the Republican National Committee, they decide who is the presidential candidate for the Republicans. CNP member. John McCain, who is the co-author of the 2012 NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, as well, and this will segue us into part of the purpose of the CNP and why they are so dangerous and why what they're saying is so dangerous. Because John McCain is a member of the International Republican Institute. If you've never heard of them, go to IRI.org and you will see that this organization brings democracy all over the world. Now, how do they do that? In the 90s, 1998 to 2003, there was a Optor movement in Serbia, where a group of nameless, faceless, nonviolent resistors used a book that was written by Gene Sharp in 1973, From Dictatorship to Democracy. This is 198 ways to topple your government using nonviolent resistance. So the IRI went in and spoke with the head of the nameless, faceless, headless organization and took notes. And they actually made a video about this. And it's linked up in one of my articles about crowd psychology, also about nonviolent resistance. I wrote a whole article about this organization who uses funding from the National Endowment for Democracy, our tax dollars, to fund these fake revolutions in Egypt, in Libya, in the Ukraine, in Thailand, the fake revolutions that tried to start in Russia and all over the world, Occupy Wall Street. They created it all.
Oh.
And so the International Republican Institute, when I first learned about them, I thought, okay, why does the Republicans, not that I'm being partisan, but why do the Republicans create these fake revolutions to put in patsy governments and install patsies or transitional councils like in Libya and what they're trying to do in Syria with the Syrian National Council waiting in the wings, set up by Hillary Clinton and the United Nations. A group of terrorists, by the way, just like the National Transitional Council in Libya. Why are they doing this? Why are the Republicans doing this? Well, when I learned about the CNP, it clicked. It made sense. Because the end game for the CNP, and I'll let a little bit of the cat out of the bag, is to create a second civil war, a second revolution here in the United States. And they are very successful because they have gotten to the point where people are standing up and doing something about it in the name for the agenda of the CNP.
Now, let me stop you, Suzanne. I know what a fine researcher you are, but I want to play devil's advocate for a moment. I doubt that they say what we want to do is take down the Constitution of the United States, and one of our tools is to create a civil war to do so. So what do they say that tells us that what you say is an accurate reading, or do they say that?
They actually do. I can take you back to the Iran-Contra scandal. And General Singlab, who was sanctioned by our government to go over and create the freedom fighters. Oliver North was the liaison for the White House and helped move everything along. He was the one of the gun runners. And what Singlab did was create, with funding from members of the CNP, including Ross Perot, H.L. Hunt, and the head of the Coors Beer, I can't remember his name. They gave $60 million in 1980, and that was a lot of money back then, or in the 1980s, I'm sorry. And with that money, Singlab was able to create a militia out of civilians. And this money went to arms and militia training and fatigue uniforms and other, quote, necessities. Years later, promoting this militia blueprint, which Singlab brought back with him, was Larry Pratt, who is currently the head of Gun Owners for America and a member of the CNP. Mm-hmm. Now, he wrote a book in 1990 called Armed People Victorious, where he suggested...
Sorry, I could not hear you. Armed People what?
Victorious.
Okay, thank you.
And he postulated, he suggested that with the expertise that was created with these citizen defense patrols in Guatemala and the Philippines, that this blueprint for militias that Singlab used to create the freedom fighters, that this blueprint should be brought back to create a militia movement here in the United States to combat communism. Now, he was in 2009 speaking at a lecture at a college talking about this book, talking about how he was also involved in the publication of the guidebook for U.S. militias known as Field Manual of the Free Militia. And it details how to prepare new recruits for the, quote, underground war. Now, in 2009, he's talking about how we really need to create a militia movement here in the United States to combat the communism, the blue team. Well, I'm sitting here in 2014 watching him speak back in 2009. I live in his reality because we do. We have a very, very influential group of militia organization that is already not only directly connected, the head of that militia organization works with and is good friends with Larry Pratt. But this group came to the aid not only of Clive and Bundy, but has been present in Marietta. And I do want to tell you guys that Rick Perry, he's a member of the CMP.
Mhm.
It seems interesting that they've managed to, in one organization, to bridge a very wide range from neocon to quasi-libertarian, and that's looks like there must have been some pretty serious money behind this setup from the beginning.
Absolutely. Oath Keepers, Stuart
Mhm.
Rhodes. This organization is the realization that Larry Pratt and General Singlab came to way back.
Well, Rhodes is one of Ron Paul's aides at one point, and
Absolutely.
I think he might have been. This might be a project that they had intended. The Oath Keepers project is certainly a serious threat to the central government, and that may be a good thing. You know.
I believe so, because they were created to be the answer. Now, I told you that I was going to explain to you the police state. Well, here we go. Now, the CFR, the blue team, realizes that the dream that Larry Pratt and General Singlab had has come to fruition. They have their militia, and it's growing exponentially. So on the blue team, we've seen the militarization of our police departments, which, by the way, are private security firms. It's been that way since the 70s. They are private security firms hired by your city to perform policing services. Don't take my word for it. Go to your city council's website and read the contract. Or go to the police department's website and read the contract. Or go to the Secretary of State's website and under a corporate search, put in Police Association and find out just how many of your police departments have been incorporated. And you'll be shocked to find out that some of them are inactive. And when a corporation is deemed inactive, it cannot operate. Some of them are in dissolution and have been that way for years. A corporation that is in dissolution cannot operate. So you got the blue team with all of this tanks and these wonderful, scary police state uniforms. And we see a lot of that in alternative and independent media, and rightfully so, because that's our enemy.
So who controls the hundreds of millions of rounds of ammunition and weapons that have been in the past 5 or 6 years purchased by the various federal alphabet agencies, the red team or the blue team? Where will who will be on which side in the false flag civil war?
Well,
Which
the blue
brings
team
me-
is. Go ahead.
Which brings me to another question that is an addendum to Ralph's, and that is, are there really two sides?
No, there are not really two sides.
Yeah.
So,
No. The angry, evil people at the CFR are having lunch with the CNP members and their friends that you watch their broadcasts, donated, bought their products, and wear their bumper stickers on the back of your car, okay? So at the end of the day, the function has to get done. They don't care who gets it. They only argue about who gets credit for it, or timing, or maybe some little detail in the policy. But the function is this country has to go to war with itself in order to destroy itself. It's just the way that we are. Too many of us realize that we have been bamboozled, that we've been disenfranchised, that we've been lied to, that we have been coerced into economic terrorism. So in order to get us to do what they've gotten every other country to do with the fake revolutions, they have taken our disenfranchisement, our legitimate disenfranchisement, and turned it against us. And a portion of the audience, a portion of the entire citizenry in the United States is being moved off to this right-wing side, as far right as you could possibly imagine, in order to militarize and create a domestic militia force. Now, what we saw with Bundy and the Bundy Ranch was that one gentleman went on national television on markets all the way from Key West to Boston, Comcast and cable television, and called for the militia, and they came. And many of them were Oath Keepers.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, later Oath Keepers was told to get off the Bundy Ranch because there was all of this collusion and propaganda and fear-mongering going on about an alleged drone strike from Eric Holder that came from credible intelligence that nobody knew what this intelligence was, and it ended up being Jared Miller. Jared Miller is a gentleman who killed 2 officers with his wife, Amanda. Amanda, who worked for
That happened after a few weeks afterwards, didn't it?
Yes.
This is a very important incident. Why did these 2 people basically commit suicide in that manner? What was really going on? In what way were they being controlled?
Amanda Miller was an employee of Hobby Lobby. Why is that significant?
Wow.
Because Hobby Lobby, the president of Hobby Lobby, is a member of the CNP. In fact, in 2004, they arrived in Las Vegas. So some people have claimed that Jared and Amanda Miller arrived in Las Vegas in order to work on their campaign because they're trying to become governor of Nevada. That's not true. If you go to Amanda Miller's website, or Facebook page rather, you will see that she posted, "We just arrived to Las Vegas safe and sound. Oh, by the way, I'm going to Hobby Lobby and to meet my new boss. I start work on Monday, super excited." So she works for the company who happens to be a member of the CNP, who happens to just recently been lobbying to create more of a humanity surrounding these corporate fictions. And this incident became such a scandal in not only mainstream but alternative, and people were martyred because Jared was showing up on InfoWars and making comments under posts, under articles. And Jared Miller was interviewed by a woman from Las Vegas, Channel 4. The video has been taken down off of YouTube conveniently, but you can still find it. He was talking about how, well, if the government wants to bear down, they can meet them with the same amount of force that the government's willing to dish out. And this gentleman went on to commit this heinous act. Members of the CNP are connected to this. I don't think that that's inconsequential. I don't think that that's just coinkydink. Larry Pratt, when the Bundy incident happened, Larry Pratt came out and spoke about the militia groups who came to defend Bundy and spoke about them in the same way that we speak about the revolutionary soldiers during the Revolutionary War in 1776. We have a problem here. Let's talk about the Civil War just for a second.
Yes, indeed.
A third of the population of the United States at the time died. We have 320 million people in the United States. If a third of us die, that's horrible. We had 2 governments. We had 2 countries within this country, the Confederates of the United States of America, who had a president and a cabinet, and the United States of America headed by Abraham Lincoln. We had corporations fighting with each other. One of them wanted to use slave labor. One of them wanted to use the industrial North and all of the mechanisms that we were using, which led to the machines that we use today. They won. They were able to produce the bullets and the guns faster. But the South has not forgotten this. Now we have this huge distraction going on down at the border. And Rick Perry, member of the CNP, saying that he's going to put out the National Guard.
Right. I was just going to say that.
Right.
Yes. So what you're suggesting very strongly is that we are being led to an armed conflict that will take down any semblance of what we know as our form of governance.
Yes.
And that these people are working consciously for it. Well, how about the people on the, what you call the blue team? Are they working consciously for the same?
Absolutely. You know, I've said it before, and I apologize for repeating, but at the end of the day, the function needs to get done. At the end of the day, they need to know that they are one step closer, that this policy or this agenda has gone through, or it's about to, and they're moving forward toward destroying this country. They have tried setting up fake revolutions here in the United States. It doesn't work. What is working is using the truth that the banks have done all of these egregious acts, that the corporations are in collusion with the government and run the government, that the pharmaceutical industry is running the government, that all of the states that we have been infiltrated. Even our city councils are pushing through NGOs and Agenda 21. All of this is real. And they take that and they twist it and they rebrand it and they repackage it and they put a "Don't Tread on Me" flag around it. And they say, grab some guns, buy some ammunition, let's go fight these people. And as many people who are willing to attend a call to arms, well, at the Bundy Ranch, we saw for the entire duration of the incident about 2,000 militia members, including members of Oath Keepers. That was the most prominent group. Now, that's not a big number, but Murrieta has been a different story. It's much bigger now. The next time, and there will be a next time, because like John Trudeau said, and he should know, because the FBI killed his family because he spoke out. This whole situation is data mining. They want to know. They have set up Larry Pratt and General Singlab and that blueprint that they bought back from the freedom fighters that they created, and now we know that as Oath Keepers. They want to know how many are actually going to do it. They hear you, they see you, they read what you put on social media, they see what you put in the forums, they see what you're sharing, they see what you're talking about. They want to know if you're actually going to get up and grab your gun and go when you're called. And as they make more calls and more people show up, they know exactly what they're dealing with as far as a military force. And it's becoming formidable. And the longer this goes on, the more formidable it becomes, because we are reacting. And when we react, we make poor decisions. We make emotional decisions. Incidentally, we make great consumers. But when we're talking about an idea as a product, which is what we're discussing here, that, to me, in my personal opinion, is one of the most dangerous products that you can buy. Because it's not your own.
Or sell.
Or sell. I've heard people, I won't name names, but I've heard people in independent media say that they are selling freedom and that they are selling liberty. And apparently it costs $25 for a bumper sticker, all the way up to $5,000 for a meet and greet. So that's how much freedom costs.
We're selling coffee.
Right. Organic coffee, friendly food.
Indeed. And I think this is an enormously important idea. Follow the money. Who and what is the money for? And is it big money? If the Koch brothers are involved, it's big money. If these other people are involved, it's big money. So when big money sells an idea, what do you need to do? How do you, Susanne, how do you advise people when they say, well, what am I going to believe? Who am I going to believe? What do you say to them?
And I understand that, and that is the most difficult thing to answer, because a lot of what we know and believe have come out of members of the CMP's mouth. All of these people that I mentioned, and some of them people that I mentioned, we know and respect and love them. They are not mainstream. They are alternative and independent. And yet, this is a serious problem. If we know that the media lies, the mainstream media, they don't want to talk about Gaza. They don't want to talk about MH17, what's really going on there. You know, the Ukrainian PM, the Patsy PM that Victoria Nuland put in power, he just resigned today.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he just resigned. I'm looking into this because I'm curious. You know, when we replaced Mubarak with Mohamed Morsi, he resigned or was taken out or was fired a year after he was put in place. But this guy just got there. I wonder what he did. I wonder what they're doing. The IRI is behind the Ukraine. In fact, Senator John McCain loves to take pictures with the leaders of the opposition. You can see pictures of him with the leaders of the opposition in Libya, in Syria with the Free Syrian Army, in Egypt when that was going on, and head of the neo-Nazi crazy KKK skinhead.
So there's a competition between the blue team and the red team to see which group can be more interventionist and get more boots on the ground in different parts of the world. Is that is that what's going on? Because it seems that right now war fervor is being really whipped up in the United States as we head in.
Well, sure. We're being brought into another Cold War. We're being brought into,
Pray it's only
I don't
cold.
know if people realize, but the MH17, that happened in 1983 with Korean Flight 007. And that led us to the Cold War.
Yeah.
Now,
well, that was sort of the high point of the Cold War.
Well, we
certainly
were
wasn't
already
the start.
in a Cold
We were
War.
we were certainly in the Cold War, but that certainly was the most gruesome, one of the most gruesome moments in the confrontation.
Absolutely, and it ended up being, oops, it was a misunderstanding. At the end of the day, when it was all investigated and said and done. But
well, it's always a misunderstanding.
I'm sure, yes, of course.
Or it's a misunderstanding.
Yeah. So
right now, Russia is in line and in bed with the BRICS nations. They are a member of the BRICS nations. China as well.
Well,
China,
now, what
Russia,
about aren't the BRICS basically in direct opposition to the continuation of the U.S. dollar as the international reserve currency?
Yes, they want to unseat the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency and move toward a global standard of gold.
As opposed to some sort of a global standard of paper that's just going to be pumped up? Because I suspect that the real agenda of the real controllers is to have an international, central bank that can pump up the inflation for all countries together, and a mega boom that might last. Who knows? A while.
Well, what the BRICS nations just did recently, they just had their 6th summit, is they decided on the new bank that they're starting with $100 billion.
Right.
Donated by the different Russia, Brazil, China, India, and South Africa. And this bank that they're starting will allow governments, individuals, and corporations to receive loans interest-free. This is a rival to the IMF and the World Bank.
But is it's denoting itself in dollars? I mean, it's $100 billion in capital. Then they've actually used dollars as the measurement.
Well, what they're they're doing is the BRICS nations want every nation to have its fiat backed in gold. So your fiat's worth would be whatever your government's stores of gold is, not on the backs of the citizens with the GDP, but rather with the gold stores. Now,
Is
in
that why
2012,
Germany was
China
trying
was
to?
buying a lot of
Oh yeah.
gold.
Is that why
This is
Germany
why.
was trying to get back its gold from the U.S.?
Yes,
They didn't
absolutely. That is why.
succeed. They
The
didn't
In
succeed.
preparation for the BRICS Nations Bank.
Right.
Now, the BRICS Nations Bank, this is
And France, by the way, too.
yes, France as well. If people remember history, France used to own Syria. So it makes a little
Well,
bit
that was only for a short period, actually. When you
I
think
know,
about it.
but maybe they want their stuff back. I don't know.
And the Turks controlled Syria a lot longer than the French ever did.
And what's interesting is Turkey is involved with a gas line, natural gas pipeline with Israel and Jordan.
Oh, yes, it is.
And Iran, Iraq, and Syria signed an accord in 2010 to build a natural gas pipeline, which Syria happens to be in the middle of that pipeline, so it sort of makes sense. It also makes sense why the not Al-Qaeda, the new Al-Qaeda ISIS is in Iraq, because that's the other end of the pipeline. Now we just got to go into Iran. Natural gas is huge. That's what Gaza is about.
That's exactly right.
I wrote this article last week about this, and I went and looked into exactly how much of what is going on in Gaza is about natural gas. Because I know that Cyprus is about natural gas, or it was about natural gas. Greece was about natural gas. Egypt, Mohammed Morsi, the reason why he got fired was because he was supposed to reinstate the accord that Mubarak had, who he reneged, to supply 40% of all Egypt's natural gas reserves to Israel. Now, Israel wasn't paying that much money, and Mubarak said, hey, I could get more money on the global market. And Mohammed Morsi was supposed to reinstate that contract, but he realized that, yeah, you know what, they can get a lot more money on the global market. So he got fired. Greece and Syria? Cyprus and Greece? Cyprus and Greece have exorbitant amounts of natural gas. And it just so happens that while the IMF and the World Bank were bearing down, Noble Energy, who is owned by the Israeli government, signed a contract to siphon their natural gas for them and give them a small cut, with major reserves going directly to Israel. These countries are being destroyed. The Palestinians right now are being murdered because the president of Palestine met with, earlier this year, Vladimir Putin to discuss the development of the Palestinian Marine Offshore Field, which is in the Mediterranean Sea, which has been valued at $4.1 billion worth of natural gas. And this extraction was originally contracted by British Gas, who still holds 90% interest in the natural gas field, and has a current standing good license that is good up to 25 years, granted by the Palestinian Authority just 15 years ago, to explore the area, develop the gas fields, and build necessary infrastructure. But they have not been able to start their exploration process and their development process. So the president of Palestine went to speak to Vladimir Putin, who is a member of the BRICS nations, who is a part of this bank that is going to, as far as the BRICS nations are concerned, replace the IMF and the World Bank, and eventually the Bank of International Settlements. And now all of a sudden, after this meeting with the Palestinian president and the president of Russia, oh my God, Hamas, we have to start blowing up Palestine.
Didn't the BIS in the past few weeks issue a major warning about international currency collapse?
Yes, they did. And I have to tell everyone, and this is an article I wrote 2 years ago, and I still reference this article today because I see evidence of it. The Bank for International Settlements told all of the central banks that they had to liquidate 90% of their available stores by 2018 or 2019 in preparation for the movement toward digital currency, cryptocurrency, where we don't have physical representations anymore. We have cards, we have tablets that do everything for us, we have chip-to-pin cards, we even have electronic tattoos that we can wear that'll give us all the access that we need. And the push for Bitcoin is part of this. The push for Dogecoin and all the other spinoffs from Bitcoin is part of this. California just recently said that Dogecoin and Bitcoin and several of their spinoffs are legal tender in the state of California because the Constitution should not limit what is considered legal tender just to paper fiat and its backing in precious metals, that digital currency is the wave of the future and it should be recognized as a legitimate legal tender.
I did not know that. That is a brand new piece of information
Yes.
for me, Susan. And it has enormous implications, as you are suggesting. Enormous. Ralph, did you know that?
Nope. I'm listening.
When did that
Tell us
happen?
more. Tell us more.
That happened about 2 weeks ago. I wrote an article about this. I was floored because a lot of people don't realize, and whenever I write about
How can people
Bitcoin,
get to your article? How can people get to the article?
Oh,
Website.
occupycorporatism.com. In the search, just put in Bitcoin.
Uh-huh.
You can put in Bitcoin California and it'll come up. One of the things that I don't know if people are aware of about Bitcoin is that they are backed by the Central Bank of France as well as Credit Mutuel.
Really?
They also have a international banking ID number, which, if you don't understand what that means, that allows them to operate as a bank account, insured by central bankers, and allowed to do business with PayPal and WorldPay and other digital payment networks to issue debit cards, enable the process of monetary transfers from one bank to another, and accept a transfer of digital currency at their location, quote unquote. This is a bank backed by the central bankers, wrapped up in a cute little Bitcoin. This is not an alternative. This is not a freedom of economic release from the terrorism that we've been under by the central bankers. This is a part of their scheme. It's very easy to instill in the minds of people that this is your idea, that this is your revolution, that this is your freedom that you're fighting for, when it's really the agenda of the CNP and the agenda of the technocrats and the agenda of the ruling elite.
Indeed, that is one of the operational definitions of propaganda.
Absolutely. And when you look at the mission statement of the CNP and the CFR, you see that they are the propaganda arm for the left-right paradigm, for the us against them. So the CNP talks about how bad the CFR is, and the CFR talks about how bad the CNP is. And the CNP doesn't talk about how bad they are, because you're not supposed to know that. It's your idea. It's your revolution. It's your constitution. We're just helping you fight for it.
Right. Control the opposition, control
Absolutely. Do we have more information on the members list, Suzanne? Because as you've gone through this discussion, that has become the, shall we say, the touchstone to the information about what they're really about. That's not surprising. What's surprising is who they are. So, do we have more members that you would like to share with us?
Oh, yes, I do. Mark Suskin, or Sosin, I'm sorry. Skozin, I'm sorry. I do apologize, Mark. I botched up your name. Mark Skozen, who is the founder of Freedom Fest. He is a member of the CNP. Now, what's interesting is on his website for Freedom Fest, it states that they are, quote, an independent, nonpartisan, non-affiliated with any organization or think tank group. However, their founder is a member of the CNP, and not only that, but he frequently speaks at their events and writes articles for the CNP website, as well as being the
How do we
founder
know
and
he
producer of Freedom
speaks?
Fest.
If they're secretive in the meetings, how do we know he speaks there?
If you go to the CNP website,
Okay.
Council for National Policy
Mhm.
.org,
Okay.
CFNP, Charlie Francis Nancy Paul.org.
Got it.
Their website is very difficult to navigate, and my husband is a web developer, and so he did his little magic to better their internal search, because when you put in a name, I was just randomly putting in names in their search, trying to see who's a member and who isn't, who has spoken at their events and who hasn't, who has been part of their organization for how long, and brought in other people to come and speak and be part of their organization. Sarah Palin is a member of the CNP.
Yeah.
She speaks regularly at their functions. It was very difficult to navigate their search engine. So what I found was more effectual is if I went back to Google and put in Andrew Breitbart, Council for National Policy, and their webpage came up. And when my husband looked at their website, he realized that they have this encryption that if you're not a member of the CNP, there's a lot of the website that you can't get to. And since I don't have a membership and a login and password, I couldn't get to it. But if I went to Google and just put in someone's name and Council for National Policy, I got the direct link to their website and was able to read about what they did, what events they attended, quotes, full transcripts of their speeches.
I assume that by now they have changed their coding and you can't get in?
No, they haven't changed a thing. Unfortunately,
you shouldn't announce that on radio.
I wrote this article, and I'm not the only one who's spoken about this. Not a lot of people have spoken about the CNP over the years.
Yep.
But it's so magnanimous, what I'm saying, that it's hard for people to understand.
Mm-hmm.
That the people that you know and love and trust have been lying to you. Not all of them, just some of the major influential ones. And that means that what they say and the direction and the agendas and the things that they tell you that you should be concerned about and fearful of and fight against come out of the CNP's rhetoric and works for the agenda of the CNP.
Does Alex
so the
Jones...
direction that the alternative and independent media has taken, not only in the stories that they cover, but the products that they sell, and that not all of them at all. The people who are connected to the members list that I spoke about. There are wonderful people in this movement.
Does Alex Jones have a connection to the council?
Through various people that he has on his show. And Pat Buchanan, Larry Klayman, Stanley Monteith, Paul Craig Roberts, Jerome Corsi. These are all members of the CNP, and they are all regulars on the Alex Jones show.
That's troublesome.
It is troublesome. There is no direct connection that I have found as of yet that Alex Jones is a member of the CNP, but a lot of his friends are, and he gives a lot of airtime to them. So say what you will, take that however you want. But if I bring someone on a radio show, there is an implied understanding that I am in accord with this person, unless during the interview I make it clear that I am not in accord with the guests that I have.
Well, that sounds fair.
You know, I would say, as the host of a radio show, let me say that it is possible to have someone on who would have connections like this, whom you do not have that kind of connection with. But it is impossible to have someone on regularly whom you do not have that kind of affiliation or association with the ideology or the company they keep. So I could have we could have on this show somebody with very, very scary connections and not ourselves be suspicious. But if that person were a regular invited back, come and talk to us and share your new information kind of guest or member of the featured company, so to speak, that would be a very different matter. So once, well, it's an interesting person saying something or writing a book or bringing forth an idea that needs to be discussed, even if disagreed with. But on a regular basis, no. Now we have a very different story.
And we have a movement toward becoming violent. And it is clear to me in all of the research that I have done that noncompliance actually works, and it's rather quick, actually. Take the example of evangelical Christians when they get upset at Walmart or Joanne Fabrics. They got upset a couple of years ago, boycotted the company. Within 2 or 3 weeks, the company acquiesced to their demands. That tells me that boycotting and noncompliance works. Last year, the Associated Press did a study, and I reported on this because the IMF was very concerned. Because Americans are broke, thanks to 2008, we have taken $3 trillion out of the global economy just because we can't afford to buy extra stuff. And the IMF is concerned that that is a trend. Well, if we did that unconsciously because we're broke, we could do that consciously. We could boycott the entire system, and it's effectual. But that's not the preferred response in a lot of alternative and independent circles. The preferred response is we have to fight, we have to be violent, we have to get our guns, we have to fight a revolution and die if we have to. And it's a militarization of an idea, and it's a sort of it has cultish tinges to it, where people complain. It's almost a cliche now, but people complain. I try and wake up my family members, and I'm ostracized. My friends won't talk to me anymore. So all I do is I talk to my other awake friends. Well, that's a tactic that cults use. They separate you from your loved ones who know you better than they do, and immerse you in the ideology until you no longer need that support, that emotional support that your friends and family gave you for most of your life, and solely depend on them to provide that to you. And when you are in that state, you are emotional. Like I said, you make bad decisions when you're emotional. Think back for a minute. You know I'm not lying. Those emotional reactions you had probably meant you had to clean up a mess. Maybe it meant that you broke something and you had to sweep something up. Maybe it meant that you ended a long-term marriage or quit a job that you actually really needed. Whatever it was an emotional reaction, and it caused you to go down a path that you really didn't need to if you had just held it in check. And when we are emotional and completely bombarded in fear, and oh my God, they're coming for us, and oh my God, the FEMA camps, and oh my God, we have to get our guns, and oh my God, the diseased children coming over from South America and Mexico, and oh my God, this, and oh my God, Hobby Lobby, and oh my God, religious freedom. We are in a state of fight or flight at all times, and we are very, very ripe for any implementation of any suggestion that would make it go away. And people do things that they...
I want to emphasize what you're saying from another point of view, in harmony with what you're saying, Susanne. When people are under stress, they regress in terms of their functional levels. They can't think as adults. They think as younger children to the last time that they were in a stress situation similar to whether or not somebody else would see the similarity. And if you can keep people in that state of stress, then you can help them regress more and more and more and control them as if you were the parent saving their anxious little selves coming to rescue them magically. And so that is a very important, that's physiologically built in. We go back to earlier modes of adaptation when we are under stress. And this fear that you're talking about, this sense of powerlessness, this sense of emotional crisis that is continually built and sold, keeps people ripe for juvenile responses to strong leaders who will mommy and daddy them.
Is this how
Yes.
armies are controlled?
Sure. When you go, I'm an Air Force brat, and when you go into boot camp, you spend 6 weeks being torn down physiologically and emotionally, and then rebuilt, because they can't send you out onto the field or the battlefield if you have complete independent thought. You have to have groupthink. Otherwise, you're no good on the battlefield. You might not follow orders. You might not do what they expect you to do.
Precisely. This is tremendously important social control. Mind control. People think mind control only means being given drugs or tortured or being given electroshock in an experimental environment. This is profound mind control. And the terrible thing is it works if you allow it, and it works very, very well. So if you don't want to be mind controlled, then you have to take control of your mind.
We are entering into the last 5 minutes of the program. How do we take control of our minds, Dr. Rima?
Well, one thing is to believe nothing that comes from official sources until you have found a way to vet it again, to bang it up against everything else that you can. And then you come to your own conclusion. And yes, you might be wrong. You might not be an expert in that particular thing, but at least you will be thinking for yourself, and you will be open continually to more data. Once you have your mind closed to data, once somebody has told you what is true, and you believe it on an almost fervent religious basis, your mind controlled. No matter what the religion is, whether it's the religion of Glenn Beck, or whether it's the religion of Alex Jones, or whether it's the religion of whatever it is, if you're not looking for additional data all the time about anything that's important to you, and if you're closed to it, then your mind is already controlled, whether you agree with me or whether you disagree with me. It doesn't matter. You're already a mind slave, if you will. So that's one thing. The second thing is, as you quoted earlier, Walt Whitman, question much, obey little. Ask why. Ask where the money goes. Ask where the power goes. And if it doesn't make sense to you, don't you go there. Now, that means that you have to use independent thought, and you also have to use critical thinking skills. And if they're a little weak because you've been through the American educational system, there are ways to become skilled at thinking for yourself.
And you've got to put your money where your beliefs are.
Yes, indeed. Susanne, quickly give us your website once more. People should read what Susanne writes.
OccupyCorporatism.com.
And the USIndependent.com, where Ralph and Dr. Rima are wonderful contributors to the USIndependent.com.
Thank you.
This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Bye now.
Pleasure.